Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode number 451 of For Immediate Release. I'm Shel Holtz.
And I'm Neville Hobson. Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, made headlines last week when a leaked recording of a staff meeting captured him delivering an expletive-filled tirade about remote work. His frustration was clear. He's had it with hybrid working, bureaucracy, and what he sees as employees slacking off on Zoom. In his rant, Dimon dismissed work from home Fridays as a farce. He claimed Gen Z employees are being left behind due to remote work and accused staff of wasting time in meetings and approvals. He made it clear JP Morgan employees should be in the office or find another job. It's a stark example of the growing divide between corporate leaders trying to enforce return to office policies and employees who have embraced flexibility. The way Dimon delivered his message raises bigger questions, not just about the future of work, but about leadership itself. Here's a clip of the last 20 seconds of Dimon's remarks, where he lays into remote work, bureaucracy, and his expectations for JP Morgan employees. Bear in mind the tone and included expletives, so put your earbuds in if you're listening in the office.
Now, you have a choice. You don't have to work at JP Morgan. So the people of you who don't want to work at the company, that's fine with me. I'm not mad at you. Don't be mad at me. It's a free country. You can walk with your feet, but this company is going to set our own standards and do it our own way. And I've had it with this kind of stuff. And, I come in, I've been working 7 days a goddamn week since COVID. And I come in and where's everybody else? But they're here and there and the Zooms don't show up. And people say they didn't get stuff. So that's not how you run a great company. We didn't build this great company by doing that, by doing the same semi-disease shit that everybody else does.
Well, that's quite something, Shel, really quite extraordinary. His remarks are a high-profile example of the ongoing struggle between executives pushing for office returns and employees who value flexibility. His outburst may energize some traditionalists, but it risks alienating younger workers, harming employee morale and reinforcing JP Morgan's image as an inflexible employer. It serves as a strong example of executive missteps in workplace communication. The broader debate on remote work's future will undoubtedly continue, but Dimon's handling of the issue may not win JP Morgan the hearts and minds of its workforce. So, Shel, what's your take on his approach?
His approach sucks, is my take on his approach. Yeah, it's made headlines, but the reality of the workplace tells a different story. Yeah, despite all of the skepticism from some executives, I think it's worth pointing out that something like 60% of organizations are sticking with their hybrid or remote arrangements. They continue to thrive in this configuration, and the data overwhelmingly supports the staying power of hybrid and remote work arrangements. Studies consistently show that nearly 1 in 4 active job listings still offer full-time hybrid or remote options, and this aligns with broader trends across industries. A lot of companies recognize that flexibility is a key factor in attracting and retaining talent. I saw one study very recently that said retention is higher in organizations that allow remote and hybrid work, and the cost of replacing employees is high, and we see a lot of employees disaffected in the current work environment. And even in sectors where leadership is pushing return to office, employees are resisting. Requests for remote work accommodations have surged. It's one of the most sought workplace benefits. But the tension between employees and executives just keeps growing. There was a McKinsey report that highlighted the successful return to office strategies, focusing less on rigid policies and more on effective workplace practices. Companies that force mandates without addressing employee concerns risk disengagement and attrition. Deloitte, EY, formerly Ernst & Young, PwC, formerly PricewaterhouseCoopers, and KPMG are all experimenting with different hybrid models, acknowledging that one size fits all doesn't work. The firms recognize that employees expect some degree of autonomy in their work arrangements. In fact, autonomy and purpose are among the key intrinsic rewards that employees seek in the workplace. And all of this is reinforced by findings in the Washington Post, which point out that businesses rigidly enforcing return to office policies are facing pushback, higher turnover, and decreased productivity. There's also a major contradiction at play. Many executives are lamenting a lack of in-office collaboration, yet employees report feeling unheard in workplace decisions. Internal communication best practices emphasize two-way dialogue, yet a lot of leaders out there, like Jamie Dimon, are failing to listen. Yeah, Engage for Success, this is an employee engagement initiative over there with you in the UK, Neville. They've long identified employee voice as one of the four enablers of engagement. When workers feel like their concerns are being dismissed, whether it's about work flexibility, productivity measures, or broader company policies, then they disengage. This recent internal backlash at Meta that we've seen is a case in point. Employees questioned leadership decisions only to have internal discussion forums censored. That deepens mistrust. So you've got this widening gulf between employees and leaders. Interestingly, while Gen Z employees express a desire for more face-to-face interaction, it's not necessarily about being physically in the office 5 days a week. What younger workers want is meaningful connection, mentorship, and clear career progression. Things that aren't automatically guaranteed just by bringing people into the office. If anything, research shows us that hybrid work, when done right, can enhance collaboration rather than hinder it. There was a report in the magazine Nature that underscored how hybrid models improve efficiency while maintaining work-life balance. And then there's morale. Studies are emerging around hush hybrid. This is a phenomenon where employees pretend to comply with return to office policies while actually working remotely as much as possible. And it's their supervisors who are enabling this. So we get a major disconnect between leaders and employees, one that can erode trust and weaken workplace culture. Companies like JP Morgan Chase fail to acknowledge this risk, alienating their workforce, particularly when there's clear evidence that hybrid and remote work aren't just popular, but effective. Dimon's broader frustration isn't just about hybrid work. His comments about cutting what he calls stupid DEI costs reflect a larger mindset shift among some corporate leaders. But whether it's workplace flexibility or diversity initiatives, executives who ignore employee sentiment do so at their own peril. Companies that succeed in this evolving landscape will be the ones that balance leadership priorities with genuine employee engagement. The world of work has changed, whether leaders like it or not. The smartest companies aren't fighting against these shifts. They're adapting to them.
Yeah, it's interesting listening to what you're saying. I mean, I've seen a lot of these surveys too and these reports. And the thing that I just wonder, surveys indicate time and time again that workers value flexibility, with productivity studies showing mixed results on whether remote work hinders or enhances efficiency. Many executives are struggling to enforce office attendance post-pandemic, leading to tensions between leadership employees, as you point out. But this kind of surfaces with regularity every week almost, seems to be. There's another survey saying here are the benefits, and yet people like Jamie Dimon say what they're saying on one level or another. A rant like his, or edicts about you got to come to the office, or the unspoken part, find another job. So what is it you think then that is going to, I guess, make the common sense view, as I see it, according to the surveys, the ascendant in all of this and not the other way around? Because what I see almost every time I look at a business journal or the business section of the newspaper is another company is trying to enforce, you got to come back to the office. That's relentless. So why is that, do you think?
I think it's a combination of detachment and arrogance. I think these leaders are not close to their workers. They're not listening. They've shut down either their own ability to listen or the listening channels. I mean, Facebook at Meta has done this by censoring their internal channels, so employees can't talk about this stuff with each other. And I think it was the CTO? I can't remember his name, but he was reported at Meta telling employees, you called it the quiet part. He came right out and said, you don't have to work here. I think Dimon said the same thing out loud too.
Oh, a number of times in his rant. Yes.
Yeah. And that's what's happening in a lot of these return to office initiatives is that the best employees, the greatest talent in the organization, they're the ones leaving. They value the ability to have greater work-life balance that comes with a hybrid arrangement. And they'd rather work for an organization that appreciates that and accommodates it rather than one that puts its foot down. Yeah, and there are some other issues that are emerging out of this as well. I mean, in addition to attrition, I was reading that Amazon, which has required all employees to come back to the office, finds it doesn't have enough office space for them. So where are they going to put them? Probably in some of the U.S. federal government offices that are now vacated.
Well, that I was going to mention that in the context of what is happening since Trump took office, the firing of thousands of public sector workers in the U.S. Is that, do you think, emboldening those companies with leaders like Jamie Dimon to really go hard on this? You've got to come back and you can always leave if you don't like the idea. Stimulating, I guess, more fear, more panic, more alarm about your own career and whether you're going to have a job or not. And so the kind of stories that are part and parcel of the reporting, I suppose, that people are leaving in droves, the best ones are going and finding work elsewhere. Are they really? Is this perhaps another indicator of the, goodbye to the first 2 decades of this century? That was the golden time, really, of travel everywhere, easy money, no low interest, ideas people could start. The idea of DEI took root, and suddenly that's all in retreat in the face of this literal, relentless authoritarianism we're seeing that the US is certainly promoting. And that's having repercussions elsewhere in Europe, certainly. So is this the end of these choices that you better buckle down if you want to keep a job, because you will not find it easy to get another one? Is that what we're looking at, do you think?
At least the pendulum has swung that way for now. It'll eventually swing back again, as it always does. But yeah, I think you have seen this kind of behavior from people like Mark Zuckerberg, who I think initially felt like they needed to accommodate Trump in order to stay out of his crosshairs, and then found that this bro alpha male sort of approach to leadership appealed to him. This is somebody, of course, who did not go to management school or work his way up through an organization to learn how cultures work. He built a company from the ground up. He's always been in charge and doesn't know any better. He used to have Sheryl Sandberg there to sort of moderate him. Now he's saying she was the problem. Her influence led them to do all of these woke things. But, the job market is definitely tightening right now, but the best people will always be able to find a job. And the data that I shared, 1 in 4 job listings is either full-time hybrid or full-time remote. Those people are going to pick those best people who are out looking for companies that accommodate that. And you're going to end up with the companies like JP Morgan Chase are going to be left with a workforce characterized by mediocrity. And who wants to do business with that? I anticipate that if employees listen and say, I don't want to work here, I can go get a job where I can have work-life balance and I can be productive and I can do great work. And I will come in when there's a reason to come in. I just wrote about this today, by the way. I think face-to-face is vitally important. You just need to do it, as a mandate when there's something going on where people are going to be able to interact. Because I got to tell you, Neville, when I am working in an open space, I usually have an office with a closed door. When I go to one of our offices, the other office, I sit out in the open office environment. If I am nose down writing articles or preparing a report or editing video, I have my earbuds in so people won't bother me. And this is really common in those environments. So bringing people into the office when the work they have to do is individual contributor work doesn't create collaboration. It doesn't create innovation. It just creates frustration and isolation. Let people do that work at home. And of course, I'm talking about the people who can't. There are obviously many jobs out there that don't work from home. I work in the construction industry. Buildings can't build themselves with workers working from home. And what we need to do is acknowledge that hybrid remote is the way of the world these days and start to train managers to manage hybrid and remote teams so they understand how to do that in a way that doesn't disenfranchise or disengage those full-time on-site workers who feel like they don't get to take advantage of a benefit that other workers do. This is a consequence of treating it like it's an interim solution to a short-term problem, as opposed to a tectonic shift in the way work is done.
I think another thing that got me thinking as well, listening to Dimon's rant, where he highlighted things I see other people talking about, other leaders and organizations, the ones who argue for a return to work. So Dimon's example in this case was talking about the Zoom and the Zoomers who don't show up. I'm in on a Friday, and where is everyone? They're not here. He talks at the beginning of his rant, and this is where most of his expletives come in, about people on Zoom calls who all they do is chat with each other and insult others of what idiots they are and stuff like that. I refuse to believe that's completely common practice in his organization. That tells me there's something seriously wrong in that organization if that is the case.
What you're looking at there is a leader who is trying to force a in-the-office culture on a workplace that is now hybrid, and the culture has to change to accommodate it. The problem here is not solved by making everybody come back to the office. It's by implementing policies and building a culture in which people understand that this is the way we do things on Zoom, and this is not acceptable. There need to be consequences for that kind of behavior, right?
Sure. I mean, he's got a wholly different view to that, in which case I would argue probably, just if this is an example, nothing's going to change there anytime soon as long as he's the CEO.
No, I don't think anything's going to change there as long as the CEO is Jamie Dimon and the dinosaurs like him who look up in the sky and see the asteroid coming and say, things don't have to change. Let's see what happens to JP Morgan Chase's things over the next couple of years as he continues alienating his workforce or building a workforce of people who, are content to come into the office every day. And, is that the workforce that's going to produce the kind of bottom line results that his shareholders are looking for? I doubt it. I don't think so.
So what would you say to communicators in an organization where this, not necessarily the CEO, but senior leadership or people in positions of power have this attitude? What would you say to them?
I think we need to, as internal communicators, serve as a conduit for information to move up. Jamie Dimon's not listening to his employees beyond the messages that they are sort of inflicting on him, petitions and the like. And he has said he doesn't care. You could do as many petitions as you want. I don't care. He needs to hear the voice of his employees contextualized by the communications team to say, look, these are the issues. This is what's happening. Let's look at the data. Let's look at our attrition rates. Let's look at who we're losing and what the pool is like out there of people who are willing to come work for an organization where they can't be hybrid or remote, and to present the scenarios that can make all of this work so that he is satisfied. He began his rant talking about young employees, right? But a young employee being in the office, head down with the earbuds in their ears so that they can focus on their work. They're not getting the mentorship or the exposure to the culture or the other things, the clear career paths that they crave. And there's no reason that has to be limited to an in the office experience. I am a big believer in face-to-face. I have repeated a line for years I heard at a conference, which is that we're hardwired for face-to-face communication, and anything that isn't is a corruption of face-to-face communication. I mean, this goes back to, the days of our lizard brains with fight and flight reactions, right? It's all face-to-face. And I do think that that's important. And I think a corporate or an organizational identity, a sense of shared common purpose, a face-to-face in the real world, not on Zoom, is important. And I think that organizations should create the opportunities for that. This, you might chuckle at the idea of a company picnic, but getting everybody together for a casual non-work event where you can have exposure to the leaders of the organization in that kind of, casual setting, where you can engage with a lot of people that you don't see all the time and have a sense, wow, this is the company. It's not just my team that I interact with and my internal clients that I interact with. I get a sense of this broader team. The same thing with town hall meetings. Get everybody together. Have a social hour before that with some beverages and some hors d'oeuvres, and then let people mingle for an hour after the town hall is over, and have this interaction and have this opportunity to see the whole organization, or you're part of the whole organization together. Bring people into the office when there are big meetings to be had, or celebrations or recognitions, reasons to have everybody in the same place at the same time. Focus on the reason for having people work from home or come into the office, rather than they need to be here 5 days a week or they need to be here 3 days a week, even if they are going to jam earbuds into their ears and, focus on their single, individual contributor work.
Yeah, I find it very surprising that we're, what you just outlined, here we are in 2025. I remember this kind of thing in the mid-90s, talking about this, town halls, picnics, or get-togethers with everyone in an informal setting in the organization. So here we are 25 to 30 years later, and we're still talking about it. Something's not right here, it seems to me.
No, I agree. And I think it's intractable leadership that is to blame here. They're not listening. They're not engaging. They're not collaborating. Something that they're telling everybody that they're bent on is more collaboration, but they're not doing it. And again, this is a minority of organizations. Most are still embracing hybrid and remote, but they're going to continue to have conflict. They're going to continue to have disaffected, disengaged employees until they wrap their minds around the fact that hybrid and remote are here to stay. Either that or, they die and are replaced.
Yeah, well, it's a huge topic, and we've touched on something that's made the news lines last week. It makes us think about this, and indeed, listeners, if you have any thoughts on this topic, any experiences you want to share, we'd love to hear them. So let us know.
We definitely would. And the link to the full rant as it was recorded and leaked will be in the show notes, and that'll be a 30 for this episode of For Immediate Release.